Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be comparing 20-inch 308 guns versus 16-inch 308 guns. Okay, so here I got a Palmetto AR-10, 20-inch barrel, Vepr 308, 16-inch barrel. Ever since I got this 20-inch AR-10 here, I've been absolutely loving it. I'm like, okay, this is a great gun. I love shooting it. I've had this out to 500 yards with a red dot and the magnifier. Got great groups out there. But one of the things I've noticed as I'm moving around with this, I mean, first of all, it is very front heavy just when you're holding it like this. But also when you got this slung across your back, this extra 4 inches over here, it moves around on your back and definitely makes you a little bit unstable. So I'm like, this is a great garrison gun, right? For if you're going to be like in a stable position, covering a road or, an entryway or something. But if you got to get to a position, right? Having a 16-inch like this, okay, this is a lot more convenient and compact, okay? When you sling this on your back, this doesn't move around a whole lot, okay? So I'm actually fighting myself not to get a 16-inch AR-10 because I haven't even paid for this one yet, okay? But I'm sure I'm going to get it. But one of the things I want to know is, okay, fine. The purpose of this gun, okay, the way I see it, is barrier penetration, okay? I want to be able to penetrate barriers past 500 yards, right? In that 500 yard to 1,000 yard range. Because inside of 500 yards, 5.56 works just great, Now, past 300 yards, yeah, 308 is probably a lot better. 5.56 starts losing energy, but definitely past 500 yards for barrier penetration, the 308 will be better. So the question now becomes, great, we know what the 20 inch is doing, but if we go down to a 16-inch, how much power are we losing, right? What are we giving up? So what I did is I pulled out the chronograph here, and I ran some bullets on this. I tested 3 different types of ammunition out of both guns, okay? But before I even start you guys with this data, okay, I want us to first go down here to the bottom, and we're going to consider the 5.56, okay? We're going to use that kind of as a baseline, okay? So I tested out the Ruger MPR. Okay, I didn't do that particular test today. I've done this in the past. So Federal Green Tips 62 grain, right, versus Federal XM 193 55 grain. Okay, so this is out of the same gun, 18-inch barrel. So the velocity of the Green Tip was 30.15. The velocity of the 193 was 31.33. Okay, energy Green Tip 12.52. Energy of the 193 XM 193 was 1198. Okay, so that's just a difference in energy of 54. But with regards to barrier penetration, the number that I'm really interested in is the momentum number. Okay, and these are all calculated numbers. Okay, so when you're calculating energy, you take the velocity, you square it, you multiply it by the weight of the bullet, and you divide it by a conversion factor. Okay, when you're looking at momentum, right, you're not squaring the velocity number. Okay, so you take the velocity number, you multiply it by the weight of the bullet, and you just divide it by the conversion factor. So I think in terms of barrier penetration, the ability to punch through, I believe that the momentum number is going to be more significant to us. It's going to be more important. So the way I think of energy versus momentum, energy is like whipping something, right? You take a whip. A whip is very light, right? By itself, you throw a whip at somebody, it's not going to hit them. But if you whip it, you give the tip a lot of velocity. I mean, it could tear skin, right? So versus, punching something with your fist, okay? Moving really slow, but because you got that mass behind your fist, when it hits something, it can push it back. Okay, so that's how I think of energy versus momentum. Energy is the whipping action, and if you notice the whip, when you whip something, it just really impacts the surface. It almost never carries through it. Okay, so you can whip something, you might destroy it on the surface, but it's not going to carry through to it. It's not going to throw something back. Whereas if you punch something, okay, you might not damage the surface, but you're going to push through it, okay? So when we look at the momentum numbers, right, the green tip, right, comes in at 26.7. Okay, the 193 comes in at 24.6. I mean, there's like a difference here of a difference here of 2. All right. So what does that mean? This difference of 2. Well, let's look at the 9mm. Okay. So I also tested out CCI Blazer. Okay, which had an energy of 343 foot-pounds. Okay, 343 compared to the relative 1200 that we're talking about here. Okay, so 343, but the momentum of the 9mm, okay, comes in at about 19. Okay, so the 19 is really close, all right, to what you get with the 5.56, right? 19 versus 26 or 24, you know, it's right in that ballpark. So that's the reason why when you know, as far as barrier penetration, 5.56 doesn't do that much better than 9mm. In tests that I have done, where I lined up barrels in a row, the 9mm, which was a heavier bullet, actually penetrated more. The 5.56 only went through 3 barrels, right, 15 feet apart. The 9mm went through 4 barrels. Okay, the 5.56 had basically destroyed itself by the 3rd barrel, versus the 9mm, where I was able to recover the bullet intact. Now you might say, hey, doesn't that mean that the momentum of the 9mm should show up here as a bigger number? And yeah, maybe, but the thing is, like, these are calculated numbers, right? So these numbers are kind of designed to kind of, you know, describe what is, you know, it's designed in such a way that we can compare things. It doesn't like absolutely tell you what is going to happen. So in the case of 9mm, I have observed that the 9mm does better barrier penetration than 5.56. Okay, and when comparing the momentum numbers, you know, a momentum of 19 on a 9mm is pretty close to the 24 and the 26 that we're seeing here of the 5.56. So the point I'm bringing out here is a difference of 2, 4, 6 in this momentum number is not that big of a deal, right? Because that's the difference here between 5.56 and 9mm. Okay, so with that, right, because that's important. I have to kind of lay that out. So later on, when we're looking at the momentum numbers up here, right, the ability of that 308 to punch through, okay, we understand what we're looking at and the significance of these numbers. Okay, so the first one I tested was Freedom Munitions. That's this guy here, Freedom Munitions, 147 grain. Okay, so first I shot it in the 20-inch Palmetto AR-10. Then I shot it in the Bepper 308. Okay. Okay, so when I shot it with the 20-inch, remember 147 grains, the velocity was 2782. Okay. When I shot it with the 16-inch, velocity was 2675. Okay. Now, interesting thing here is, and this is going to keep coming back now, when we look at the variance, right? Because it was a 5-shot group. On all these, I did 5-shot groupings. Okay. The difference between the slowest bullet and the fastest bullet, what I saw is that the difference out of the 20-inch barrel was more. There was a difference of 157 feet per second between my fastest and slowest bullet versus a difference of 41 feet per second between my fastest and slowest bullet. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is going to be true all the time, right? But if I had shot these 5 shots at a paper at 100 yards and I was holding steady, the 16-inch barrel would have shot a tighter group because there was less variance. Okay, so this variance number, that's something that we want to pay some attention to. Okay, so as far as the energies, the 20-inch did, oops, sorry, move the camera. The 20-inch did 25.27. The 16-inch did 23.36 a difference of 191 foot-pounds of energy. That's basically the difference of a 38 special, right? A 38 special comes in at around 200 foot-pounds of energy. So that's the difference here. Now, when we look at the momentum number, right? Because remember, the energy is whipping, like that energy, that whipping action. How much energy does it have? The momentum is its ability to punch through. And if we're looking at this as barrier penetration, as anti-material, the momentum number, I think, is going to be more important to us. So when we look at the momentum number, the 20-inch had a momentum of 58.4. The 16-inch had a momentum of 56.2. I don't think that's that big of a difference. Okay, so this is something we're gonna keep seeing over here. Okay, so the next one I tried out was this American Sniper. This guy over here. Okay, which I actually had this out to the 500-yard range, and it's actually did pretty good. It's been because the best group I got here at 100 yards was like 2.5 inches at 100 yards, right? 2.5 MOA. But when I went out to 400 and 500 yards, this thing was actually hitting 2 MOA. So it it ended up being better at further distance. And I think that why would it do something like that? It all comes down to the variance, right? And this is what we're seeing. Let's take a look at over here. So when out of the 20-inch barrel, right, when I shot this American Sniper, 149 grain, okay, it had a velocity of 2671 out of the 20-inch. Out of the 16-inch, you got 2443. Okay, that's the velocity. But if we look at the variance, the difference between the fastest and the slowest bullets, like on the 20-inch, it was a difference of 119. And on the 16-inch, it was a difference of 81. So on both of these cases, I'm seeing that the 16-inch, now this might, I mean, I don't know if it's, I don't think the barrel has anything to do with this. I think it's just the ammunition, right? How consistent is the gunpowder loaded into the case? But for whatever reason, I'm seeing that the variance on the 16-inch barrel, 3 times on this, in this test, has shown up to be a smaller difference. Okay, so as far as what I was talking about, if I've got a variance difference here of 119, so what I typically saw when I was shooting is I would get like it was a 5-shot group, 3 shots would be like really close in velocity, and then like the other one would be a little further away, and then the 5th one would be like even further out, right? So I think that that's the reason why, like a lot of time, and I don't think it's just this ammunition. I've seen this in other types of ammunition out there. And that's the reason why I think it's a lot easier to get like a 1-inch group if you're just doing 3-shot groups versus if you're doing 5. Because if you're doing 3-shot groups, right, and then you get like 2 like close to each other and then far away, you say, oh, okay, I pulled that, you know. But then when you start doing like 5-shot groups or 10-shot groups, right, you start seeing more of like a cluster in the middle, and then you start seeing these flyers out here. This is being reflected here in the variances, right? We have a difference of as much, in this case, 119 feet per second between the fastest and the slowest bullets, right? Up here was 157, okay? So, looking at the energy numbers, out of the 20-inch barrel, 2361, okay? Out of the 16-inch barrel, 1975. So we actually dipped below 2,000 foot-pounds of energy, right? So this is the energy column here, okay? So there's a difference here of 386. So there's a pretty big difference here, right, compared to over here. So the difference here is like the power of a 40 cal versus here the difference is the power of a 38 special. So why did it change so much from one to the other? I think all the difference is mostly in the variances. I mean, I think that because, you know, I think if I shot this again, there's a good chance that this number would change, right? Because the variance numbers are big enough that the difference can be anywhere from 200 foot-pounds of energy to 400 foot-pounds of energy. Now with match-grade ammunition, you're not going to see that much of a difference. It'll be a lot smaller. It's usually closer to 50 foot-pounds of energy in terms of the variance that I have seen there. However, we can't stockpile thousands. Most people can't stockpile thousands of rounds of match-grade ammunition. So this is the stuff. This is the stuff that we're stockpiling for the apocalypse. This is the stuff that we need to know how well it's going to work and what the limitations of this stuff is, right? And this stuff here, this Freedom Munition stuff, I ordered like whatever, like another 800 rounds of this. This is the stuff that we're getting in bulk. We need to know what the limitations are, you know, and we need to make it work for us, okay? So going back to the momentum number now, right? That's the important number for barrier penetration. Between the 20-inch and the 16-inch, all right, we have a momentum of 56 on the 20-inch, 56.9, and 52 on the 16-inch. Again, if we go back to comparing the 9mm, right, down here, which had a momentum of 19, and then the 5.56 is coming in at, let's say, 25. A difference of a momentum of 5 is not huge, right? So what I'm starting to see here is a pattern where as far as barrier penetration, right, the difference in momentum is not that big between a 16-inch barrel and 20-inch barrel, okay? So let's look at the last one here. The last one was this Tula 308 that I looked at, okay? Now, in shooting this, one of the things, because what I did is I tuned the gas system of my gun to make sure it would basically cycle this, because I kind of like the feeling that I got from shooting this is that it was lighter recoiling, so I felt that this probably was probably you know, the least powered. So I have this. Basically, I set the AR-10 in the 5th position from the closed, right? So it's in position 5 out of 17, and it ejects the Tula at 4 o'clock, and then everything else, the Freedom Munitions and the American Sniper, that's ejecting at like 2 o'clock. Okay, but I kind of had an idea from the ejection pattern that the Tula was going to be running a little bit slower. So, and basically I proved it today to myself. So the Tula out of the 20-inch barrel, there's 150 grains, right? 150 grains. Had a velocity of 2409, okay? At a 16-inch barrel, it was 2268, okay? So yeah, you can compare it to the others up here. You can see it's running slower, okay? But again, the variance, for whatever reason, the 20-inch is giving us a wider variance. It has a variance of 162, which is very close to what we saw up here with the Freedom Munitions. And then the out of the 16-inch barrel, the variance, right, the speed between the slowest and the fastest bullet in the 5-shot group was 89. Okay, so the result, I mean, the shooting that I did today seems to indicate that either, you know, it was a fluke and all of my bullets coming out of the shorter barrel had less of variance, right, between their, or for whatever reason, the 16-inch barrel produces a more consistent velocity. I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. I would have to do a lot more shooting, probably do 10 times the amount of shooting that I did today to be able to say that definitively, right? But that's what, you know, today's numbers, because basically I shot this, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, 5 shots each, so 6 times 5, whatever that is, I think that's like 30 rounds. That's how many bullets I shot today to get these numbers here. So with the Tula, the energy that we're seeing out of the 20-inch barrel was 1933. Okay, out of the 16-inch barrel was 1714. Okay, all right, and the difference here is 219. Okay, so we got a difference here of about 200. We had a difference up there about 200. For whatever reason, this 386 over here that we saw in the middle, I think I had a lot to do with the deviation. You know, if we shot this again, I have a feeling that that number would probably close up again. Okay, but again, this kind of gives you an idea of the variances that you will see in the speed of bullets, right? And that's why you're always seeing flyers, right? You're doing 5-shot groups where you got like 4 shots that are tight and then 1 shot that's like up there somewhere. This is why, because of this variance number that you keep seeing over here. You know, the difference in the speed between the slowest and the fastest bullet. Now let's take a look at the momentum. The momentum of the Tula coming out of the 20-inch was 51.6. The momentum of the Tula coming out of the 16-inch barrel was 48.6. Okay, so as far as the barrier penetration goes, okay, we're when you're looking at the 20-inch barrels, we got 58, 56, 51. I mean, I think the middle of that is probably the 56. Okay. When we're looking at the 16-inch barrels, right, we have momentum of 56, 52, 51. So I think the middle of that, well, no, I'm sorry, we got 56, 52, and 48. I think the middle of that's going to be somewhere about 53, maybe. We're seeing a difference in momentum of about like 3 or 4, maybe 5. Okay, so a difference in a momentum of 5. Okay, right, is the difference that we're seeing. It's basically a tiny difference. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. It's a really small difference, and if you look even within the same with the Federal over here, right, both coming out of 18-inch barrels. Okay, when I shot the green tips, they had a momentum of 26.7. When I shot the 193, they had a momentum of 24. So out of the same size barrel, we have a difference in momentum of 2 down here. So if you've got a difference of 2 here, and then up here between 20 and 16, you're seeing a difference of 4 or 5. That's not a big deal. So based on this testing, my conclusion is that as far as the effect on the target at 500 yards, right, or 800 yards, if you're using a 16-inch barrel or a 20-inch barrel, it's gonna hit the target with pretty much the same power. Okay, that's now because of the slower velocity, right, it's gonna drop more. Okay, so you're gonna, if you have a variable scope, you might be down. You may have to use if you have a scope that has a bullet drop compensator, you may have to hold up a little higher. Okay, so it's gonna affect your holdover. Okay, there's no question about that, because we are seeing that, as expected, the 20-inch in all these cases is pushing the bullet out there faster, and what that means is that the bullet is going to go further before gravity pulls it down to the ground. Now, at some point it will affect the accuracy, because the slower bullet, okay, is going to go transonic first. Okay, so I think that a 308 basically stays supersonic, and this is probably data out of a 24-inch gun. Okay, so this is not something I gathered myself. From what I've heard, a 308 is supersonic out to about 1,500 yards, right? So that's probably out of a 24-inch gun. Okay, so as you get shorter and shorter, the point at which you go transonic is going to get closer and closer. Okay, so out of the 20-inch barrel, I'm just guessing here, but we're probably going transonic, let's say maybe around, I don't know, 1,200 yards, okay? Whereas the 16-inch might be going transonic at, I don't know, 1,000 yards, maybe, I don't know, 900, I don't know, I'm guessing there. But the point is that the shorter barrel, okay, is going to fall below the speed of sound sooner, right? Because its velocity out of the barrel is slower to start with, so it's going to go below the speed of sound sooner, and because of that, it's going to destabilize at a closer distance. Okay, so when bullets go transonic, they destabilize. Now, there's certain bullets that are better when they pass through. They are better at going transonic. I don't know what they are offhand, but some bullets handle that better than others. Okay, this is something that some people that do distance shooting take into consideration. Okay, after doing all this testing today, all right, analyzing this data, all right, obviously this is a very data-intensive video that I'm doing today. Focusing on the momentum number, okay, because the goal of this gun is anti-material, right? This is for the Mad Max Road Warrior apocalypse, right? You want to be able to stop convoy of trucks trying to run you down. So you want to be able to shoot. I mean, obviously you're not going to crack the engine block with 308, but you can do significant damage to the engine. It can go through the dashboard, because as you get to the top of the hood, you can go through the dashboard, and it can go through that and still do damage to soft, mushy things that it finds behind the dashboard. Based on the momentum numbers here, that's the number I recommend you guys focus on. There's not that much of a difference between the 20-inch barrel and the 16-inch barrel. Let me try and hold this at a distance where you guys can, take a screenshot and save this. Get my fingers out of the way. Save this for future reference. Okay. And the one thing I could not fit on this board was the 9mm. I just ran out of space. I didn't want to have to try and make everything smaller. The 9mm, again, CCI Blazer. I forgot the velocity, but the energy was 343 foot-pounds of energy, and that gave a momentum of about 19. Okay, so that 19 momentum, okay, is very close to what the 5.56 is. Okay, that 19 momentum. Arguably that's the reason why 5.56 is not that good at barrier penetration. I mean, it'll go through barriers. Like I can shoot through those rims over there, but once it goes through the rims, it breaks up. It doesn't do a whole lot after that. Okay, but when we're looking at the when we're looking at the 308s momentum wise, I mean there's a significant difference there. But there's not that much of a difference between the 20-inch and the 16-inch. So anyway, drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think. My conclusion is I'm definitely getting a 16-inch AR-10. Okay, definitely. I guess I'll probably get it next holiday because I paid $700 for this. I'm not going to want to pay more than $700 for that one. The way I got it is I got the lower separate from the upper. The lower was $200. The upper was $500. You have the upper shipped to your house. Manufacturer saves on firearms tax. That's how you're able to get this cheaper. I wish Ruger would wake up, and start doing the same thing. Right, start selling their AR-10s. Although I think the Palmetto is a lot better because of the gas system. This has 3 slots per turn for a total of 17 gas positions, and the gas issue has always plagued AR-10s, right? In the past, AR-10s were always considered unreliable because of gas issues. And the problem with AR-10s, right? Just so you guys understand why do AR-10s traditionally have a problem? It's because of the ammunition. 308 has often been used for many years. Been used by hunters out of bolt action guns. Okay, so when you're shooting in a semi-automatic, the recoil spring basically acts as a shock absorber, so that picks up a lot of the recoil. Okay, when you're shooting a bolt action gun, you don't have that to pick up the recoil, so it all goes into your shoulder. The bolt action guns that hunters typically like to carry through the woods because they're walking long distances are also lighter guns, so it hits them a lot harder. Okay, so hunters for years have been asking for softer recoiling 308. Okay, you would think that it would be a lot easier for them to just move to a different caliber, but no, it's like, no, we want to shoot 308, we want it lighter hitting. So manufacturers basically developed 308s that had less velocity. They put less gunpowder in the cartridge so that it would recoil lighter for them. So that's why even within the same bullet weights, right? You can get like this one over here, the 20-inch, right? This had a velocity of 2782, but you can get like other 308 ammunition. Out of the same barrel, it'll be like down to like 2500 velocity, right? So because there's these huge velocity differences for 308, because a lot of guys were shooting it just in bolt actions, that's why we have this issue. Okay, just so you guys know what's going on. So an AR-10 must have an adjustable gas system. Not so necessary with an AR-15, right? Because AR-15s You know, even in like 223 is also used for hunting, right, for small game, but uh, even in a light bolt gun, the 223 doesn't recoil that much. So there was never a call to, hey, give us softer shooting ammunition because it's hurting our vaginas. I joke with the hunters like that. That's just a joke. Don't take it too serious. But anyway, so there was never a call to lighten up the 223, okay? But there were calls to lighten up the 308. So that's why we got these humongous differences. Okay? Now, let me actually say this as well. In terms of shooting this today, okay, one of the differences that I did see between the 20-inch and the 16-inch is muzzle blast, okay? Because initially, see, here's the thing: when you're using the chronograph, you have to basically go back at least 15 feet because otherwise the muzzle blast will come out, and so there's these two sensors in here, right? It basically senses the speed in the front, senses the speed in the back of the bullet as the bullet passes. So it measures the speed. It measures the time between the passing of the bullet from between 2 points, and that's how it calculates the velocity. Okay. Now, if there's a lot of blast coming out of the muzzle that basically comes through here, it will interfere with that. So I had no trouble when I was shooting. When I shot initially I shot this AR-10 at about 15 feet back. When I went to shoot this Vepr 308, right, with the 16-inch barrel, I kept getting error readings, right, because the muzzle blast was interfering, was basically confusing the sensor, and I ended up taking all of my readings. Initially I went back 20 feet. Again, no problem with the AR-10, right, the 20-inch barrel, but the 16-inch barrel, even at 20 feet back, was giving me error readings. I had to go back 25 feet, and that was the point at which I could run the bullets through the chronograph and not get error readings. So also what happened is this box over here, I had a 16-inch barrel, got blown off the table, right? It was like over here inside, the blast just blew it off the table because I shot it first with the 20-inch. The 20-inch didn't even move the box. When I shot it with the 16-inch, just blew it right off the table. So there is a significant muzzle blast coming out of the shorter barrel. So I definitely don't want to put a muzzle brake on a 16-inch because now that's even more blast coming back towards you. You're definitely not going to want to shoot a 16-inch barrel inside of, indoors, because even with hearing protection, it's going to concuss you. Because remember, here's the thing: when you got ears on, right, the noise isn't just going through your eardrums; it's also traveling through your body. Okay, if you do a lot of shooting, right, like I do. Like 5.56, I can shoot all day with earmuffs on, no problem. With 308s, if I shoot these enough, I'll get a headache even with the earmuffs on because the sound is basically creating a concussion wave going through my body. And with enough 308 shooting, it will give me a headache. Okay, so that's one of the things to be aware of with 308s. Also, the reason why I don't think that it will ever replace the 5.56 in the military, because people aren't going to want to train with it as much, okay? I mean, it's a lot of fun when you can come out here and shoot 308 whenever you feel like it, but it's another thing, it's like if it's part of your job to shoot every day, right? So if it's your job to shoot every day, you're definitely going to want to shoot 5.56 over 308, okay? So that's one of the things I wanted to share with you guys. I could definitely see the concussion on the table with the shorter barrel. That's going to be significant, okay? In fact, one of the things I've noticed is when I'm shooting benched or prone, okay, the gun is a lot louder because when I'm shooting standing, right? When I'm shooting standing, or rather, if I'm shooting off the table, benched, some of the sound basically kind of bounces off the table and bounces up, so I tend to get more of a concussion blast back versus when I was shooting through the chronograph, I was shooting like this. And it was noticeably less loud. Okay, so that's another interesting thing with the shorter. The other thing that happened is because this is a fixed scope here, I was having a little bit. I was concerned about hitting these posts over here, which I did do several years back. Okay, actually a couple of years back, I did end up shooting that. So I did end up removing this scope because it comes off pretty easy on the AK. And damn, is this a light gun, man? This is a light gun. So when I was testing this is actually how. I mean, I shot it with the scope initially, and then I ended up taking it off. But damn, this is a beautiful light gun. You know, the funny thing is, like, I haven't shot this in several years because the last time I was shooting this, I wasn't so crazy about the 308s. I also wasn't shooting. I wasn't shooting at long distances, right? Because lately I've been shooting 500 yards plus. So that's one of the things that have kind of pulled me back into 308. Like 308 is a round that you use to either shoot past 500 yards or to defeat barriers. That's the purpose of the 308. At least those are my feelings at the moment. So drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. I hope the video was useful for you guys. I look forward to getting that gun out to the 1,000 yard range soon.